Chapter 1995. Almost at the same time, Xiao Zhou sensed her gaze and raised his head to look over. The moment he saw Chu Luiyue, his eyes widened slightly. Surprise, joy, disbelief, many emotions surged out, almost causing his emotions to surge. He subconsciously raised his leg, intending to come over. Chu Luiyue shook her head calmly. The small boat immediately understood and stopped in its tracks. He forced himself to look away. I almost forgot, this is Cloud's state. There were still many people watching him in the dark. He could not act rashly at this time, lest he bring her any trouble. Thinking of this, Xiao Zhou lowered his head slightly, as if nothing had happened. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, and there was a crowd between the two sides, so even if someone noticed Xiao Zhou's momentary daze, they would not be able to tell what was going on. Chu Luiyue quickly retracted her gaze. However, her heart was still beating rapidly. She never thought that she would run into Xiao Zhou here. When she decided to go to the Divine Ruins world, Xiao Zhou was still unconscious. Chu Luiyue could only leave him behind. Who would have thought that they would meet again here? She did not know how his body was now, and why did he appear here alone? Countless questions surged in her mind. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. Rong Xiu followed her gaze and immediately understood why she had such a reaction. He held her hand. His slightly calloused palm was broad, strong, and very warm. Chu Luiyue's heart gradually calmed down. Since everyone was here, there was no hurry to meet each other. Let's see what the heavenly Yin mountain was like first. Just as she was thinking, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Chu Luiyue subconsciously looked up and saw a figure flying up from the top of the heavenly Yin mountain. Noticing the commotion, everyone quieted down completely and raised their heads to look. Some people could not help but reveal excited expressions, and their eyes were filled with admiration as they looked at that person. Chu Luiyue had a faint guess in her heart. This person, perhaps, Heavenly Yin Mountain Gatekeeper, Hong En. Welcome, everyone, to participate in the trial today. As expected, Chu Luiyue's mind calmed down. This person was indeed the so-called gatekeeper. She narrowed her eyes slightly and carefully sized up that person. He floated in the air, high and mighty. He looked to be in his 30s and was not tall, but the pressure from his body could not be ignored. I got Chu Luiyue's thoughts. This kind of strength was very common in the Divine Ruins world, but here, it was an extremely top-level existence. Sure enough, as soon as the pressure spread out, the expressions of the many cultivators at the foot of the mountain became solemn. The expression between their brows became even more respectful and careful. This was that person's goal. That person looked around and revealed a somewhat satisfied expression. His deep and sonorous voice continued to ring out. The rules of the trial are very simple. Chu Luiyue could not help but chuckle in her heart. The rules were simple indeed. She just did not know what they were planning to do to the heavenly Yin mountain. Of course, if you want to participate in this trial, you have to pass the examination first. As Hong En spoke, he waved his sleeve. A palm-sized bronze mirror instantly flew out of his sleeve. The bronze mirror fell from the sky and grew with the wind. With a muffled sound, the bronze mirror stabbed straight into the ground. At this moment, it was already as tall as a person. The mirror was covered in rust and looked very old. However, the expressions of the people present became more and more serious when they saw this item. They all understood that this was a hurdle that they had to pass. Whether they could participate in the trial depended on this. If they could not pass the examination, then all their previous preparations would be in vain. I'll go first. A voice sounded from the crowd. Then a young man walked forward. There was nervousness on his face, but more than that, there was excitement. Under everyone's gaze, he walked step by step to the bronze mirror. Hong En said, "Don't be nervous. Just try to come over." The young man's Adam's apple bobbed. He nodded, took a deep breath, and walked forward. Then his legs successfully stepped into the bronze mirror. Chu Luiyue stood at the side and could clearly see that the young man's leg had indeed reached the other side of the bronze mirror. The mirror, which looked a little dim earlier, was now like a ripple. It swayed gently without any obstruction. The young man looked delighted and continued to walk forward. In the blink of an eye, he successfully walked through the bronze mirror. I passed. I passed. He cheered excitedly. Hong An nodded satisfactorily. Very good. You can go up the mountain now. Yes. The young man was greatly encouraged and immediately rushed up the mountain excitedly. The forest was dense, and his figure soon disappeared behind the trees. Everyone watched with different expressions. Some were envious, some were jealous. Everyone began to go up one after another. However, not everyone could pass through the bronze mirror. Chu Luiwei watched from the side and realized that about 1/5 of the people were rejected by the bronze mirror. That was equivalent to being eliminated. Looking at the dejected people, Chu Luiwei touched his chin. I wonder what the standards of the bronze mirror are. However, the bronze mirror looked very familiar. Chu Luiwei had a vague guess in his heart. However, before he found clear evidence, he had to remain skeptical. Brother, let's go. He Xilan urged. He Ziji took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion in front of them. Chu Luiwei looked over and immediately frowned. Xiao Zhou was standing in front of the bronze mirror. Half of his arm had already reached in. It was obvious that he could enter smoothly. However, he lowered his head slightly, and for some reason, he pulled his arm back. This action shocked everyone present. Hong An's expression was also slightly serious. What's wrong with you? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1996. Xiao Zhou retracted his hand, took a step back, and said indifferently, I don't want to participate in this trial anymore. I quit. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. The scene suddenly fell into an awkward silence. Many people looked at each other. What was going on? He said he didn't want to participate and he didn't want to? Half of his arm had already reached in, and now he said he wanted to quit? This was too casual. Hong An obviously did not expect Xiao Zhou to say such a thing, and his expression turned cold. Are you sure? There were countless cultivators who wanted to participate in this trial. This was the first time he had seen someone suddenly want to quit halfway through. Moreover, it was obvious that he could get it through the review. It's good that he quit. This way, we'll have one less competitor. That's right. He doesn't want to participate, but there are many people who want to participate. He really doesn't know what's good for him. All kinds of discussions could be heard in low voices. Little Boat's expression seemed to waver a little. He pursed his lips, and after a moment, he said hesitantly, let me think about it. After saying that, he took a few steps back and made way. There was a burst of laughter from the crowd. Think about it again? Who did he think he was to put on airs like this? The gatekeeper's temper was not that easy to deal with. Hong An also frowned, and he was very annoyed. He had never encountered such a situation before. Those who were able to come here were all here for cultivation. Who would repeat this? He was about to reprimand him when his gaze suddenly froze. That young man was actually a rank 9 warrior, and it seemed that he was only a step away from breaking through to the high god realm. He didn't look old either. Among these people, he was indeed one of the best. Thinking of this, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. If he really let him go, it would be a great loss. Hong An hesitated for a moment, and his expression relaxed. Then I'll give you some more time to think about it. Everyone was in an uproar. Obviously, they did not expect Hong An to be so lenient and give the young man a chance to go back on his word. Xiao Zhou heard this, but there was not much surprise on his beautiful and exquisite face. He just nodded. Continue. With Hong An's order, the others no longer cared about the small boat and began to line up again for the inspection. After that, the process went very smoothly. He Ziji and He Xilan successfully passed, but the remaining people who came with them were all eliminated. He Ziji then turned to look at Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei. He was also very curious as to whether the two of them could pass. Rong Xiu walked in front. His expression was calm as he walked forward. The surface of the bronze mirror flowed past him like water. With a single step, he crossed the bronze mirror and successfully passed. Chu Luiwei followed behind Rong Xiu. After Rong Xiu went over, It was her turn. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes as he recalled Xiao Zhou's reaction. He was on high alert. Of course, Xiao Zhou would not do that for no reason. He had his own considerations, and at the same time he was warning her. Chu Luiyue suppressed her aura as much as possible and walked forward. Buzz. The moment she touched the surface of the mirror, alarm bells went off in her head. The water droplet that had been quietly floating in her dantian seemed to be summoned by some kind of power and was ready to move. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue was already prepared. She took the initiative and forcefully restrained the force around her body, stopping the flow. The fluctuation that was about to rise was forcefully suppressed, just like that. Her hand smoothly reached out to the water-like mirror. Then, she took a step forward and passed smoothly. The whole process only took a few breaths. From the beginning to the end, Chu Luiyue's expression did not change at all. She was as calm as ever. No one knew what she had experienced in that moment. Rong Xiu reached out his hand to her. Chu Luiyue then realized that her palms were drenched in sweat when Chu Luiyue's warm and dry hands held them. Rong Xiu's fingertips gently rubbed the back of her hand. Chu Luiyue's heart finally calmed down. She looked at the bronze mirror with a complicated gaze. There was a very strange power hidden inside. When she passed by, she could clearly feel that someone was observing her. That feeling sent a chill down her spine. However, it was clear that the people in the surroundings did not notice anything amiss. Those who passed were excited and happy. Those who failed were lonely and regretful. Chu Luiyue's eyes drooped slightly as she thought to herself. Little Boat should have felt the existence of that strange power before. That's why, Brother Bai Li, I heard that the heavenly Yin mountain is very dangerous. Let's go up together so that we can take care of each other. How about it? He Ziji was clearly waiting here for this plan. Although He Xilan was somewhat dissatisfied, seeing that Rong Xiu and Bai Li had successfully passed the examination, she could not say anything more. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue looked at each other for a moment. After discussing, they headed up the mountain together. They were not slow and quickly entered the forest. After walking for a distance, Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. Through the dense forest, she could still vaguely see the scene in the bronze mirror. When she turned back, Little Boat just happened to raise his leg and smoothly pass through the bronze mirror. Everything looked no different from the others. However, he did not team up with anyone and continued to be alone. After standing still for a moment, he chose to go up the mountain alone. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze. A quarter of an hour passed quickly. Chu Luiyue and the others walked in the forest, but did not encounter any problems. The wind blew through the forest, making rustling sounds. This place doesn't seem to be as dangerous as the legends say? He Xilan muttered in a low voice. She had been nervous for so long. We just came in. Whether there is danger or not, we will know later. He Ziji's expression was very serious. Young Master He, you said before that the duration of this trial is a month? Chu Luiyue suddenly asked. Although this heavenly Yin mountain is tall and steep, it shouldn't take that long to climb to the top, right? Even an ordinary person without any cultivation base would finish climbing in 2 or 3 days. If it was a cultivator, it would only be faster. Even if there were some traps and dangers in the middle, a month's time was indeed a bit long. He Ziji said, because this is only half of the trial. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Actually, you are right. Generally speaking, it only takes a few days to reach the top of the mountain. And the order of climbing to the top of the mountain also determines the ranking of the trial. But after that, everyone will have to stay at the top of the mountain for a while until a month later, the gatekeeper will bring people to the Divine Ruins world. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1997. Why is that so? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. Since the ranking of the trial will be out once we reach the top of the mountain, why should we wait here for another month? If they really wanted to bring people to the Divine Ruins world, they could just go directly. Why go through so much trouble? He Ziji was stunned for a moment. Because this is the rule that was set from the beginning. There was no reason. From the moment they knew of the existence of this trial, the rules had already been set. This was like something that had been set by convention. No one would break the casserole and ask about it. If the gatekeeper said so, then they would do so. It was that simple. Previously, Hiziji had not thought about this question. Hearing Chu Liyue's question, he was a little puzzled. But he could not figure it out. After thinking about it and not getting an answer, Hiziji scratched his head. This? Probably because so many people are going to pass through the gate world, so they have to make more preparations? Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu both came from the Divine Ruins world. Naturally, they knew that this guess was impossible. If that was the case, then this matter was even more problematic. Suddenly, a scream was heard, breaking the silence. The few of them looked back and saw a few people running towards them in a panic. All of them looked panicked and had blood on their bodies. It was obvious that they had just gone through a fierce battle. Behind them, a gray-winged demon wolf was rapidly approaching. The forest was dense and it could not move freely. However, as a 9th-grade demon beast, its speed was still very shocking. Those people were being chased by it until they were in a sorry state. "Save us! I beg you!" The youth running at the front shouted in panic. Xilan pulled Hiziji's sleeve. "Big brother, we are in a competition. How can we help others? If they were close to their own people, then so be it. But these people were strangers to them. Why should they save them? What's more, they brought the danger to us." Hiziji nodded. Although he had always been warm-hearted, he also knew that he had to act appropriately. He did not want to lose his life because of this. "Let's go." Hiziji growled and turned around without hesitation. Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu naturally did not want to interfere. They had already made up their minds. They wouldn't attack if they could. As long as they could reach the top of the mountain, they would be able to find out what they were up to. Seeing these people turn around and leave without any intention of helping, despair flashed in the eyes of those people. In this trial, there was a tacit rule. Once you participate in the trial, life or death doesn't matter. If he died here, he would have died in vain. Despite the dangers, there were still countless cultivators who rushed forward. Because in this world, the strong were still respected. However, Chu Liyue had only taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped and looked back. Rong Xiu stopped and followed her line of sight. With this look, he also noticed that something was wrong, and his expression became slightly restrained. When the two of them stopped, they quickly attracted Hiziji's attention. His eyes widened slightly as he asked in disbelief, "You guys aren't really going to help, are you? This is a trial." Those people were all their opponents. Of course, Chu Liyue did not want to help. She only felt that there was something wrong with that gray-winged demon wolf. Thinking of this, she took a step forward and flicked her wrist. A snow-white ray of light streaked across the sky, heading straight for the gray-winged demon wolf. The sound of a sharp blade piercing flesh made one's teeth ache. Then there was a muffled sound. Bang! That gray-winged demon wolf fell heavily to the ground. A dagger as thin as a cicada's wing had almost completely sunk between its eyebrows. Dark red and sweet blood slowly flowed out. The gray-winged demon wolf's eyes bulged, and its expression was ferocious. However, it still gradually stopped breathing. Finally, its head tilted, and it was completely dead. Hiziji and Xilan were both shocked. One move. This woman had actually used a single move to kill the gray-winged demonic wolf? This meant that her dagger had not only pierced the gray-winged demon wolf between its eyebrows, but had also shattered its beast core. What kind of strength was this? Hiziji had long thought that these two people might be much more powerful than they seemed on the surface. However, when he truly saw this scene, his heart was still filled with shock. In any case, he asked himself, he definitely did not have this ability. Xilan also shuddered. The way she looked at Chu Liyue had also undergone a great change. She did not doubt that if the other party wanted to, she could definitely use the same method to easily take her life. After all, she could not even defeat this gray-winged demon wolf. Thinking of her previous offenses, Xilan's entire body was covered in cold sweat. However, Chu Liyue did not have the mind to pay attention to these two people. She walked in that direction. Rong Xiu walked side by side with her. The few people who had just escaped from danger were all stunned on the spot. Looking at the gray-winged demon wolf's corpse, they could not regain their senses for a long time. The gray-winged demon wolf that had almost taken their lives had died just like that? Only when they heard the sound of footsteps did they regain their senses. Many thanks. The youth who had shouted for help at the beginning looked at Chu Luiyue with a face full of gratitude. The remaining people also hurriedly expressed their thanks. It was just that their faces were still in shock, and they looked really miserable. Chu Luiyue did not pay attention to them. She walked straight to the gray-winged demon wolf's side and bent down to pull out the dagger. The bright and sharp dagger was not stained with the slightest bit of blood. She turned her gaze and looked at the gray-winged demonic wolf. Not getting a response, the few people were a little embarrassed. However, thinking that their lives had been saved by her, they were still very grateful in their hearts. May I know your names? In the future, you can go down the mountain. Chu Luiyue straightened her body and said indifferently. What? The few people were all stunned and looked at each other. This meant to let them withdraw from the trial? That's right, if she did not make a move, they would not be able to continue participating in the trial. Moreover, with their current state, they probably would not be able to win. Then, the youth in the lead hesitantly opened his mouth, wanting to inquire about Chu Luiyue's identity so that he could repay her in the future. Chu Luiyue just lazily waved her hand. No need to thank me. I did not intend to save you. These words made it impossible for them to respond. Seeing that Chu Luiyue did not seem to want to say anything more to them, the few people did not continue to pester her. After solemnly thanking her again, they went down the mountain. The figures of the few people quickly disappeared. Hiziji and Hizailan looked at each other, both puzzled. If she wanted those people to withdraw from the trial to reduce a few opponents for herself, it did not seem to make sense. With her strength, she obviously would not put these people in her eyes. Chu Luiyue's eyes drooped slightly. Looking at the faint mark on the gray-winged demon wolf's neck, she seemed to be in deep thought. This gray-winged demon wolf had an owner. Digression, 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1998. More importantly, it seemed to be the kind that had been specially tamed, and there were some subtle differences between it and ordinary contracted magical beasts. The wound on the gray-winged demonic wolf's neck had already healed, and it was covered very well by its hair. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't notice it at all. Judging from the state of the scar, it should be quite deep. This gray-winged demonic wolf must have suffered a lot. Outside the Divine Ruins world, if one could contract a 9th-grade magical beast, they would be overjoyed. Who would be so ruthless? Unless the other party didn't put this 9th-grade gray-winged demonic wolf in their eyes at all. Hiziji and Hizailan looked at each other strangely. They didn't understand why Chu Luiyue and Hizailan kept staring at the corpse of the gray-winged demonic wolf. But when they thought of the strength she had just displayed, the waves in their hearts still couldn't calm down. She should have her own reasons for doing so. It seems that this heavenly Yin mountain is indeed not very peaceful. The corner of Rong Xiu's mouth raised slightly as he smiled faintly. Chu Luiyue glanced at him and knew that the two of them were thinking of the same thing. She nodded and smiled as well. That's right. But this trip is quite worth it. She looked in the direction of the mountain peak. Let's go. I wonder what other surprises are waiting for us up there. The few of them continued to walk towards the top of the mountain. Probably because she still had lingering fear from the scene just now, Hizailan didn't dare to be presumptuous anymore. She ran to Hiziji's side and followed without a word. From time to time, she would look at Chu Luiyue. Her eyes were filled with curiosity and inquiry, as well as a trace of envy and jealousy. This woman looked to be less than 20 years old. Her entire body was ordinary and there was nothing eye-catching about her. But who would have thought that her strength would be so powerful when she made a move? With this level, she would probably be able to get into the top few in this trial. As for her husband, although he hadn't made a move until now, Hizailan didn't dare to underestimate them anymore. Without Hizailan's noise, the surroundings instantly became much quieter. Hiziji wanted to ask a few questions, but in the end he chose to give up. The two of them were likely stronger than he had expected. The few of them walked in silence. Probably because Chu Liuyue's body carried the bloody smell of the gray-winged demon wolf, which was quite intimidating. They didn't encounter any trouble in the next hour. A piercing sound was heard all of a sudden. They all stopped at the same time. He Ziji was the first to raise his guard. Who? A moment later, a figure appeared in their line of sight. Chu Liyue calmed down. Small boat. His speed was extremely fast and his movements were nimble. After a few leaps in the forest, he was already not far away from them. Then, he stopped on top of a tree and looked up at the few of them. He Ziji and his sister immediately became nervous. It's you? Wasn't this the young man who was hesitating in front of the bronze mirror? He was born extremely beautiful and delicate, with a head of soft golden short hair that was unforgettable. They had a deep impression of him, so they recognized him the moment they saw him. What do you want to do? He Ziji sensed a strong bloody smell on the young man's body, and his brows furrowed. However, Small Boat didn't pay attention to him. He only glanced at him indifferently, then turned around and broke off a branch that was as thick as a thumb, and threw it out. Immediately after, a painful and short cry came from not far away. He Ziji and He Xilan's expressions changed. This was a human's voice. Was he killing someone? However, after a short moment of shock, they quickly accepted this fact. Because in this trial of the heavenly Yin Mountain, life and death didn't matter. Competition and even killing each other was allowed. Once you died here, you couldn't blame anyone else. If you wanted to blame someone, you could only blame yourself for not being strong enough. But, just by throwing out a branch, he ended a cultivator's life. This kind of strength really couldn't be underestimated. Small Boat turned around and looked over. Just when He Ziji thought that he was going to come over, he retracted his gaze and quickly left with a few leaps. That thin and frail figure soon disappeared into the forest. He left just like that? He Xilan let out a long breath. I thought he was going to come over and fight us. He Ziji's hanging heart also relaxed. We have more people, he shouldn't dare to act rashly. As he spoke, he glanced at Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu beside him. For some reason, he had a faint feeling that the reason why the young man didn't come over was because of these two people. Was it because of some kind of fear? But no matter what, they had avoided trouble. That young man's strength was clearly above theirs. Thinking of this, He Ziji felt bitter in his mouth. He had long heard that those who came to Cloud State City to participate in the trial were all top geniuses, all of them extraordinary. But he didn't expect that the few he met were all stronger than him. Originally, he was still quite confident in himself. Now, the trial had only started for a short while, and his self-confidence was almost shattered. This small episode didn't seem to have any effect on them. After Small Boat left, they quickly continued forward. On the way, they met with a few more troubles, but to Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu, it was nothing. The two of them didn't even do much, leaving most of the work to He Ziji and his sister. The talent and strength of these two siblings were actually not bad, if they weren't compared to Chu Liyue and his sister. Of course, this comparison was very hooligan. During this process, Chu Liyue's thoughts were more focused on the magical beasts that appeared in the forest. Later on, they met two 9th-grade magical beasts. Without exception, their bodies were also covered with similar wounds as the gray-winged demonic wolf. Obviously, these were magical beasts that someone had reared and deliberately released at this time. As for the purpose, it was clear as day. It was nothing more than a quick screening of the people participating in the trial. 2 days passed quickly. On the morning of the third day, a clear and melodious whistle came from the top of the mountain. Chu Liyue looked up. At this time, they were already 2/3 of the way up the mountain, barely able to see the figure of Hong and hanging in the air above the mountain. These few days, he had been there, monitoring the progress of the entire competition. Looks like someone has already reached the top. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and said softly. He Ziji and his sister both looked disappointed. It was a pity that they didn't get first place. He Ziji thought for a while, and finally couldn't help but ask. Brother Bailey, you clearly have a chance to get first place. Why, mobile users, Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1999. Why were they stalling for time? It doesn't matter if we're first or not, as long as we're in the first batch, we'll pass the trial, right? Chu Luiwei interrupted him with a smile. It's a coincidence that we're here for this trial. We're not too obsessed with first place. As long as the final result is the same, nothing else matters, right? Ziji was speechless for a moment. He could tell that the other party's words were sincere. They really didn't care about first place. Perhaps this was the confidence that came from their powerful strength. Ziji was a little emotional, envious, and relieved. In fact, they were right. As long as they could get the last place, it didn't matter whether they could get first place or not. Since someone's already here, this trial should be over soon. Rong Xiu looked at Chu Luiwei. Let's go. After making this decision, the group's speed quickly increased by quite a bit. They didn't encounter any more trouble on the way. After about 2 hours, they finally arrived at the top of the mountain. At this time, there were already 7 or 8 people standing at the top of the mountain. Xiao Zhou was also among them. Seeing the 4 of them appear together, the people at the top of the mountain were slightly stunned. They almost all came up alone. At most, there were 2 people together. There had never been a situation where all 4 of them arrived together. The 4 of you actually came together? Hong An had already landed from mid-air and recorded the names of the people who came up one by one. Seeing the few of them, there was a flash of surprise in his eyes. I remember that you all started moving together from the foot of the mountain, right? Seeing that Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu didn't intend to speak, Ziji hurriedly said, Yes. Hong An looked at them. The 4 of them didn't seem to be injured. There were only sporadic bloodstains on their bodies. The others also joined forces, but very few of them could rush up together. It seemed that they were quite strong. Hong An's expression became a little more eager. Congratulations, you've passed the trial. Then report your names in order. Ziji stepped forward first and reported his name and age. Xilan followed closely behind. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei were the last to arrive. Of course, their names were fake. However, when he reported his age, Chu Luiwei suddenly had a thought and changed the answer he had prepared earlier. 17. Hearing this, Hong An's eyes lit up, and he carefully looked at Chu Luiwei. You're only 17? Chu Luiwei looked to be about 20 years old. Now that she suddenly said 17, it suddenly seemed a lot smaller. Actually, the difference between a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old girl wasn't that big. Although the people around were a little surprised, they didn't pay too much attention to it. However, Hong An seemed to be exceptionally happy. Yes? Asked Chu Luiwei in a seemingly nonchalant manner. Is there something wrong? Hong An chuckled. Oh no. I just feel that 17 years old really has a limitless future. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly, as if she believed his words. By the way, there's still some time before the end. You guys can rest on the side first. Hong An's attitude was obviously better than before. And this was only because he heard that Chu Luiwei was younger than expected. 17 years old, she was currently the youngest one here. Chu Luiwei lowered her eyes to hide the ripples in her eyes. She responded softly and retreated. Many people around them looked at them. Chu Luiwei pretended not to see them. After retreating to the side, she began to wait quietly. Another 4 hours passed, and it was noon. People came up one after another. When the 50th person arrived, Hong An finally put away the booklet in his hand. At the same time, he blew the whistle again. This whistle meant that those who had yet to arrive had all been eliminated. Some of them were only a short distance away from the top of the mountain. After hearing the whistle, they were all shocked and annoyed. However, the outcome was already decided, and no one could change it. After wandering around for a while, these people finally returned. The people who stayed at the top of the mountain were naturally overjoyed. Passing the trial meant that they could enter the Divine Ruins world. After confirming that no one else came to disturb them, Hong An looked at the people in front of him. He had an appreciative smile on his face. First of all, congratulations to everyone for passing the trial. This also means that you are one step closer to the higher level. With just a few words, many people's hearts were surging. The excitement on their faces were even more than when they were at the foot of the mountain. However, everyone should know that after this, we still need to wait here for a month before we can go to the Divine Ruins world. During this period of time, everyone would be able to rest and recuperate. They could also continue to train. After a month, we will set off. There was no problem with this. Everyone was very happy when they heard this. So the reason we stayed here during this period of time was to let us adjust our condition to the best of our ability. He Ziji revealed a look of relief. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Chu Lue smiled. If only it was that simple. But unfortunately, this Hong En really didn't have any good intentions. Most of them were indeed injured, but they weren't very serious. With such injuries, a few days would be enough to completely recuperate. Why would it take a month? Chu Lue found a seat at the edge and sat cross-legged. Rong Xiu took the opportunity to sit beside her. The others also found their own places to stay, planning to wait for this month. Xiao Zhou didn't come over to greet Chu Lue and the others. Instead, he sat alone on the right side of Chu Lue. As long as they looked up, they would be able to see each other. The top of the lunar mountain seemed to have been cut off by something. It was very flat and wide. It was more than enough to accommodate the 50 of them. Everyone sat down separately. After exchanging a few pleasantries, they all quieted down. Some people began to try to heal their injuries. Some were absorbing the energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. In short, everything looked normal. After Hong En finished counting the number of people, he rose into the air again and hovered in midair. Chu Lue raised her eyes and took a look. Why did he go up again at this time? She kept feeling that this kind of attitude was a little arrogant and strange. It even made her feel like she was being watched. Chu Lue finally suppressed the thoughts in her heart and gently closed her eyes. Time passed silently, and the mountain wind blew. Dusk fell, and the full moon hung high in the sky. A trace of coldness swept over. Chu Lue suddenly opened her eyes. The force in her body was quietly flowing away. Digression, there are 2 more updates at 8:00 to mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2000. This feeling was very subtle. If she didn't have the Tianjing Yuan meridian and was extremely sensitive to the force, she wouldn't have noticed that something was wrong so quickly. She subconsciously moved and wanted to get up. Rong Xiu's voice suddenly came and fell clearly into her ears. Chu Lue immediately restrained herself. At this time, it was indeed not a good time to act rashly and alert the enemy. She looked around without batting an eyelid. It was quiet all around. Everyone was in their positions and didn't seem to be wrong. Most of them probably hadn't noticed that their strength was flowing away. After looking around, Chu Lue retracted her gaze and looked at the ground in front of her. The flat and rough mountain rock was grayish-white. Under the moonlight, it reflected a few faint phosphorescent lights. The light didn't seem to be abnormal. However, the force that had flowed out of her body earlier had flowed into the mountain rock below her. There was obviously something below. After thinking for a moment, Chu Lue bent her fingers slightly and then flicked gently. Ah! He Xilan suddenly exclaimed and jumped up. Who hit me? The scream was heard and immediately woke up everyone present. Everyone turned to look at them. Everything was going well, so it was hard for anyone not to be startled by this sudden change. Hong En was resting with his eyes closed. When he heard the noise, he immediately opened his eyes. He frowned. What's wrong? Everything was going well. Who knew that it would be interrupted like this? He was in a bad mood. Naturally, his expression wasn't any better. Hearing his majestic voice, He Xilan immediately became nervous and her voice became much softer. Someone just attacked me. Who attacked you? Hong En looked around. Everyone was in their respective positions. It didn't seem right. I don't know. He Xilan was cultivating when she suddenly felt a pain in her back. She was shocked and subconsciously thought that someone had attacked her. When Hong En asked, she answered without thinking. But now that she had calmed down, she felt that something was wrong. She had no grievances with the people here. Who would attack her? Moreover, It was in front of so many people? Most importantly, she couldn't tell where the force came from. In this case, it would be difficult for her to identify. There was a hint of impatience on Hong An's face. He Xilan became more timid and panicked for a moment. I don't know. Hong An's expression became worse. He Xilan was afraid that he would blame her and quickly said, But I'm really injured. Lord Hong An. Hong An narrowed his eyes. Were you injured? He Xilan blushed and murmured, I hurt my back. After all, she was still a young girl. She was still a little embarrassed to say this in front of so many people. But there was no way to check her back. She couldn't possibly zesty no one to be sure. Hong An examined, TT feel injured even if sheet T to injury to T everyone's eyes were focused on his Xilan, making her feel uneasy. It's fine. It hurt so much that it was probably purple. But it really wasn't much of an injury. It seemed like she was making a mountain out of a molehill and deliberately stirring up trouble, Hong An said in a deep voice. Since you're fine, just stay here. Even if you don't want to cultivate, don't hold up the others. His words were a little harsh. He Xilan bit her lip, feeling wronged. He Ziji hurriedly said, Lord Hong An, please don't be angry. My sister has been spoiled by the family. She gets flustered easily, but she doesn't have any bad intentions. Don't worry, I'll teach her a lesson. I won't do it again. Hong An glanced at him. Remember what you said. If you can't stay here, you can leave. You should know that even if you've passed the trial, you may not be suitable to enter the Divine Ruins world. In the past, there were people who were eliminated in this 1 month. His words were full of warning and threat, which immediately alerted everyone present. Hiziji also broke out in cold sweat. Sit. As he spoke, he hurriedly pulled his Xilan to sit down. The farce seemed to have come to an end just like that. Chu Liwei turned his head slightly and asked softly, Just now. What happened? His Xilan was feeling wronged, but when she heard Chu Liu's question, she couldn't hold it in anymore. Someone really attacked me just now. He injured me. Hiziji shouted in a low voice, Xilan. Don't say any more. Don't you think you've caused enough trouble? It wasn't easy for them to pass the trial. They couldn't let their efforts go to waste and be chased down the mountain. When his Xilan was yelled at by him, the grievance in her heart exploded. She couldn't help but cry and sob. Even Big Brother didn't believe her. Chu Liwei blinked his eyes, and his voice became even softer. From the looks of it, she doesn't seem to be lying. But everyone stayed in their own positions. Who could have attacked you? His Xilan didn't expect Chu Liwei to speak up for her. She immediately felt grateful in her heart. She clenched her fists, gritted her teeth, and said hatefully, Who knows what's going on? I think, maybe there's a problem with the heavenly Een Mountain. Digression. Chapter 2001. Xilan. Hiziji's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly covered her mouth. What nonsense are you talking about? How could such words be said so casually? Xilan blurted out those words and immediately regretted it. She hurriedly looked at Hong An. However, Hong An had already closed his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. He did not care about the situation here. After confirming that he had no intention of continuing to pursue the matter, Hiziji heaved a sigh of relief. His entire back was soaked in cold sweat. Xilan's tears fell on the back of his hand, making him angry and distressed. However, he could not vent his anger. Xilan, this is not home. You can't be willful. You must be careful with your words and actions in the future, understand? Xilan nodded while crying. At this moment, she also realized the seriousness of the matter. Chu Liwei smiled and said gently, Yes. This is the heavenly Een Mountain. How could there be a problem? It must be a misunderstanding. Hiziji looked at her gratefully. He originally thought that this woman's temperament was a little cold, but he did not expect her to speak up for him at this time. Thank you. No need. It was fine as long as everyone was safe and sound. After Chu Liwei finished speaking, he did not say anything else. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. However, Xilan's words just now were heard by many people around. Some people secretly exchanged glances, and all of them were suspicious and uneasy. Looking at Xilan's appearance, it did not seem like she was lying. After all, creating such rumors would not benefit her in any way. Why did she have to be so thankless? However, her situation was indeed a little strange. If these people present did not make a move, then who else could it be? This heavenly mountain? Was there really a problem? On the surface, this farce had indeed subsided, but in many people's hearts, the seeds of doubt were planted. First, it was Xilan. Who knew if this kind of thing would happen in the future, and whose turn it would be? Who knew they might even be more heavy-handed, their minds were in a mess, and they did not have the mood to heal or cultivate. An inexplicable sense of unwillingness and anxiety quietly surged among the people at the top of the mountain. Hong'an frowned. He finally opened his eyes and looked down. With such a ruckus, all their previous preparations had been wasted. His heart was filled with anger, but he couldn't vent it. These people were not stupid. Once they realized that something was wrong, they would definitely react quickly. Therefore, he had to be more careful. Even if they were delayed, they could only accept it. At most, he could just make up for it later. After convincing himself like this, Hong'an's mood finally calmed down. However, this peace did not last for long. 2 hours later, the same thing happened once again. However, this time, the one who was ambushed was a young man around the age of 20. His shoulder blade had been cracked. Moreover, he didn't know who did it. The first time, it might have been a misunderstanding, but this time, there was no way to explain it. Furthermore, his injuries this time were more serious than before. Everyone's heart sank when they saw the young man sitting on the ground with a pained expression on his face. What's going on? Would there be a third time, or even more? Who can say for sure? If it's even more brutal in the future, I'm afraid his injuries will become more and more serious, or even, could it be that there's really something fishy about the heavenly mountain? Everyone discussed animatedly, and many people already wanted to investigate the heavenly mountain. Hong'an's suppressed anger surged in his chest. There's nothing wrong with the heavenly mountain. Someone is definitely messing with us. After this happened, he couldn't continue to stay high and mighty, so he could only return to the top of the mountain. He walked to the young man's side and personally examined him, but he didn't find anything. This made Hong'an's head hurt even more. In fact, he had been paying close attention to the situation at the top of the mountain. However, he didn't notice how this happened at all. It was as if the strength of the sneak attack had suddenly appeared out of thin air. But this was too strange. If the people present did anything, they definitely wouldn't be able to escape his eyes. But he didn't notice anything. Hong'an asked the people beside him to bandage the young man's wounds. The surroundings were silent. After this happened twice in a row, everyone was very uneasy. Xilan couldn't help but whisper, "Big brother, I already said that there's something wrong with this place. I'm really not talking nonsense. Look at this. What if this was just the beginning? Who knew what would happen next?" Ziji frowned and looked at her, indicating for her to stop talking. But even if Xilan didn't say it, everyone present already had the same thought in their hearts. Hong'an stood up, thought for a moment, and waved his sleeve. A huge red barrier immediately enveloped everyone. "All right, don't make wild guesses. Now that I've set up a barrier, the same thing won't happen again. You guys can continue to rest in peace," Hong'an said in a deep voice. However, at this time, these words clearly had no effect. Everyone was still standing in place, not daring to sit down, rest, or cultivate. They felt that it wasn't safe. Rong Xiu suddenly said, "This brother is injured and shouldn't be able to stay any longer. Should we send him down the mountain?" His voice was clear and indifferent, but it instantly reminded everyone. That's right. His shoulder blade was cracked, and it had a huge impact. In this situation, Hong'an actually didn't mention letting him leave from the beginning to the end. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2002. Hong'an's brows furrowed, but they soon relaxed. "It's just a small injury. You'll recover in 10 days to half a month." As he spoke, he looked at the injured youth. Do you want to leave the mountain and give up the chance to enter the divine ruins world or continue to persevere? Choose for yourself. Chu Luiwei sneered in his heart. These words were too interesting. Those who came here were all aiming for the divine ruins world. He deliberately said this, so of course it would make people waver. Sure enough, when the young man who was still hesitating heard this, his expression immediately became more determined. To stay. Although the injuries on his body were not light, he would definitely be able to fully recover within a month if he took good care of himself. It was not easy for him to pass the trial and come to the top of the heavenly Een mountain. If he gave up and chose to leave, he was really unwilling. Hearing his answer, Hong An's face revealed a trace of admiration. That's right. It was not easy to become an expert. One had to put in a lot of effort and pay a price. If one was timid and hesitant because of a small matter, then in the future, there would be no future to speak of. These words caused the expressions of many people around to change. Wasn't this implying them? However, Hong An's status was noble, and his words were not completely unreasonable, so everyone fell silent. All right, let's all stay here. Hong An looked around, and after saying this, he walked to the side. This time, he did not go up again. Instead, he stood not far away from the crowd. It seemed that he was planning to guard them strictly. The crowd did not say anything else and returned to their positions, waiting quietly. Xilan tugged at Ziji's sleeve and lowered her voice. Big brother, I think this place is really strange. Why don't we go back? Of course, Ziji would not agree. For this trial, they had prepared for so long and sacrificed so much. How could they give up just like that? Seeing that Xilan seemed to be a little afraid, Ziji patted her hand and patiently persuaded her. All right, Xilan, don't think so much. Isn't Lord Hong An right next to us? He'll definitely be fine. Xilan's lips moved. Seeing her big brother's determined expression, she knew that she would not be able to persuade him. Therefore, he had no choice but to give up. Got it. Ziji patted her head in relief before retracting his gaze. However, this consolation did not make Xilan feel at ease. She lowered her head and wrung her hands together. Big brother didn't know, but she did. Someone must have ambushed her just now. Furthermore, the other party's strength was definitely above hers. No, it should be said that the other party was above Hong An. To be able to avoid his scrutiny and make a move silently, twice at that, it was simply terrifying. Of course she wanted to go to the Divine Ruins realm, but she had to be alive first. Xilan was full of anxiety, her mind was a mess. She couldn't calm down to cultivate, so she had to look around from time to time. Many of the other people present had the same thoughts as her. Those who could come here were no ordinary people. There were some things that when one thought about it carefully, one would vaguely sense that something was wrong, which would then make one's back feel cold. Just like that, a day slowly passed amidst everyone's uneasiness and suspicion. In the blink of an eye, it was the night of the second day. Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged with her eyes closed. When the moon rose into the sky, that familiar feeling came again. This time, she was prepared, so she sensed that something was wrong the moment the force in her body was devoured. Her heart skipped a beat. There was a Xian formation under the mountain rock. It wasn't obvious yesterday, but today, the energy fluctuation was as clear as day. She didn't know if it was originally like this, or if Hong An had done something out of worry. However, no matter what, Chu Luiwei finally confirmed her previous guess. The corner of her lips lifted slightly, and an extremely faint smile flashed across her face, which disappeared in an instant. The moon was high in the sky, and the night breeze was cool. Everyone's hearts, which had been hanging for half a day, finally gradually calmed down. It seemed that yesterday's incident was really just an accident. However, their happiness didn't last long, as another youth's body shook and directly vomited blood. Bang! That youth's face turned pale, and he fell to the ground with a dull thud. This was especially clear on the originally quiet mountaintop. Third brother. A slightly older young man next to him was shocked and hurriedly went forward to help him. Third brother. What happened to you? Everyone looked over, and when they saw the messy dark red bloodstains on the youth's face and body, their expressions changed. Hong, and also rushed over immediately. What happened? The youth propped himself up. His mouth was full of blood and his face was pale. He had just said 2 words when he coughed violently. That wretched appearance was truly frightening to look at. The youth beside him first took his pulse, and then his expression turned ugly. Third brother has suffered internal injuries, and I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to recover without a month or 2. As he spoke, he directly tore apart the youth's clothes. There was a purplish-red mark on his back. It was obvious that this was a newly added scar, and it was also this force that caused him to suffer internal injuries. When the youth heard this, his expression turned even darker. 1 or 2 months, this was still optimistic. In any case, no matter what, there was no way to continue participating in this trial. Dragging a sick body to the divine ruins world, wasn't that courting death? Hong'an's brows were also furrowed, and a fire burned wildly in his heart. How could this be? He had been waiting by the side and guarding very carefully. If these people did anything, he would definitely be the first to notice. But now, things had happened just like that, and he had not noticed at all. The surroundings were silent. Everyone's gaze moved back and forth between Hong and the youth with different expressions. And felt like there was a blade on his back. There could be 1 or 2, but not 3. The same thing was happening again, and each time it was more serious than the last. It was obvious that the people present were already wavering. It was definitely impossible to use the previous excuse to fool them. The youth hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "Lord Hong, and I want to bring third brother down the mountain. His injuries can't be delayed." The youth immediately dissuaded him. "Second brother, I can go down by myself, don't delay you. How can you do it by yourself like this?" The youth interrupted him, not allowing him to say anything. Although it was a pity to give up this opportunity, his third brother's life was more important. Hong took a deep breath, as if he had made a decision. "You don't have to leave. I'll bring you to a place to recuperate." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2003. The moment these words were spoken, everyone was taken aback. Hong stood up and waved his sleeves. The surrounding red barrier instantly dissipated. Immediately after, a wooden tablet flew out of his hand. Buzz. Following the buzzing sound, a huge silver barrier appeared before everyone's eyes. A powerful aura continued to spread out from above. Everyone on the top of the mountain was stunned by this scene. Their faces were filled with astonishment and shock. Chu Liuyue's eyes lit up. "It's here." Behind this barrier is a small, independent space. It is also the closest existence to the Divine Ruins world, which is only a single gate away from it. Only by passing through this barrier and entering can you truly see the Door Realm and step into the Divine Ruins world. Originally, this barrier should only open after a month, but since you don't want to stay here anymore, why don't you go ahead of time? With just a few words, everyone's hearts surged. This heavenly mountain was quite strange. Strange things happened frequently, and they couldn't stay any longer. If they could enter ahead of time, it would naturally be best. Hong looked at the 2 brothers. In that small space, the energy of heaven and earth is abundant, and there are many heavenly materials and earthly treasures. After you go, you can take good care of yourself. When your body recovers, you can leave at any time. Of course, if you still want to go to the Divine Ruins world at that time, you still have the opportunity. "Thank you, Lord Hong'an." When the 2 brothers heard this, they immediately became excited and happy, thanking him repeatedly. There was no better result than this. Hong'an waved his hand. In fact, he was very annoyed. He should have brought these people here for a month, but only 2 days had passed. He didn't get anything, and he had to send them in. He had really suffered a huge loss this time. But in the current situation, there was really no better solution. If he suffered a loss, so be it, as long as it didn't affect the overall situation. Moreover, there were a few good people in this batch. In the end, there might even be a reward. Thinking of this, his mood finally became a little better. He took the lead and flew in front of the silver barrier. "Now, everyone line up and enter in order." Almost immediately, someone stepped forward. "I'll go first." Such a great opportunity was really tempting to them. Who didn't want to be first? Who didn't want to become stronger? In the face of huge benefits and temptations, almost no one could remain rational. Apart from Hong, and there were only 50 people here. The process progressed very quickly. In just a short while, a third of them had already entered. The young man supported his younger brother and followed in. Everyone could see the excitement on their faces. Rong Xiu chuckled. "Even after suffering such serious injuries, you still refuse to give up. You're really amazing." Chu Luiyue looked on coldly. She rarely helped strangers. The main reason he made a move this time was to find out Hong En's plan. They had already gone this far, but the two brothers still chose to stay. No one could help him in this situation. "Shall we go too?" He Ziji said. Subconsciously, he looked at Rong Xiu and Li Tianlan. For some reason, he felt an inexplicable sense of security when he followed them. He Xilan's feet seemed to be nailed to the ground. "Big brother, can we not go in? I keep feeling that something is wrong." He Ziji only thought that she was still worried about what happened before, so he said, "There's nothing wrong. You're just scaring yourself. Don't worry, I'm here to protect you, okay?" He Xilan stomped her feet. She also knew that it was impossible to stop now. Unable to persuade her big brother, she could only agree. At this time, more than half of the people had already entered. Chu Luiyue laughed and looked at Rong Xiu. "Let's go. Let's see what kind of world it is inside." Rong Xiu nodded and held her hand. The two walked side by side. He Ziji and his sister followed closely behind. After experiencing so many things before, they had now subconsciously regarded Rong Xiu and Li Tianlan as their backbone. The small boat arrived in front of the silver boundary. The soft and fine hair on his forehead covered his eyebrows and eyes. Therefore, at this time, no one saw his slightly frowning eyebrows and the hesitation and disgust that quickly flashed in his eyes. "What's wrong?" Hong En stood in front of the boundary. Seeing the small boat stop, he felt strange and asked, "Are you going back on your word this time?" He had a deep impression of this golden-haired young man. If not for the fact that his talent and strength were really outstanding, he would not have given him face before. "I'm telling you this time, there's no chance to go back on your word, do you understand?" Hong En was very annoyed by these things. What little patience he had left had long been exhausted when he opened the enchantment. So at this time, he was not polite when talking to the small boat. The small boat's eyes flashed and he nodded gently. "I know." With that, he directly lifted his foot and stepped into the boundary. On the boundary, a wave flashed and disappeared in a flash. Hong En glanced at it and inexplicably felt that something was wrong, but he could not tell what was going on. Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice rang out, interrupting his train of thought. "Lord Hong En is really kind to open the boundary in advance for everyone." Chu Luiyue had a smile on his face, as if he was very grateful. "I really don't know how to thank you." Seeing that it was her, Hong En's face looked better and he chuckled. "It's nothing, it's what I should do. After all, those gathered here are all top cultivation geniuses." He lifted his chin. "You guys go in quickly too." Chu Luiyue responded and was about to lift her foot when she suddenly stopped. She looked up and looked at the center of the boundary. There, a wooden tablet was floating quietly. This was thrown out by Hong En just now. This huge boundary was also summoned by it. Hong En followed her gaze and frowned slightly. "What's wrong? What's so good about this wooden tablet?" Chu Luiyue's lips curled up and said with a faint smile, "Nothing, I just feel that, Lord Hong En, your wooden tablet looks a little familiar." Digression. Come at 6 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2004. Hong En immediately became alert. "Oh, you've seen it before?" Chu Luiyue smiled. "Back then, I inadvertently saw a similar wooden plaque in a small stall. At first glance, it really does look quite similar. But that was far from being as exquisite as yours. If you look closely, the shape is also not quite the same. Hong An's hanging heart was finally at ease. So that was it. What kind of good thing could a stall have? It was most likely just a wooden plaque that happened to look similar. After all, things like wooden tokens generally didn't have much of a difference. You're of noble status, so the things you carry are naturally extraordinary. How can those crude things compare to them? Chu Liuyue's calm words completely dispelled Hong An's suspicions. He laughed. All right, they're all trivial things. There's nothing to be concerned about. Hurry up and go in. Don't delay. Chu Liyue readily agreed. Rong Xiu took a step forward. When he passed through the barrier, his eyelids drooped slightly, and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. Yue. He turned around and called out. Chu Liyue held his hand and followed him in. A thin ripple spread out into the surroundings. Rong Xiu calmly raised his hand. The ripple was instantly annihilated and completely dissipated. It was as if it had never appeared. The entire process took only a moment. Hong An's gaze happened to be elsewhere, so he did not notice it at all. The two figures quickly disappeared into the barrier. He Ziji and his sister quickly followed after them. After passing through the barrier, Chu Liyue stood still and looked ahead. The mountains were lush and verdant. There was a valley below, and a river meandered through it. The energy of heaven and earth was abundant. It was not inferior even to the Yuntian Tower. But this was not what surprised Chu Liyue the most. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she stared fixedly at the scenery in the distance. The sky was blue, and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. A curtain of light fell from the sky. It really was the Gate Realm. Everyone that had arrived successively were all stunned on the spot when they saw this scene. Their hearts were filled with excitement as they looked at the door of the light curtain that was like a miracle, and their eyes were filled with excitement. Gate Realm. Was that the Gate Realm? Lord Hong An is right. The heaven and earth energy here is many times more abundant than outside. As long as we pass through that Tao Gate world, we should be able to reach the Divine Ruins world, right? This place is already such a fairyland-like existence. I really wonder what kind of scene it would be inside the Divine Ruins world? All sorts of discussions could be heard. Most of them were sighs and yearning. Obviously, everything before their eyes had a huge impact on them. Even He Xilan, who was a little reluctant before, was shocked when she came in and saw this scene. She couldn't help but sigh. So this is how it is inside. After being stunned for a short while, she shook He Ziji's arm excitedly. Big brother. Luckily, we didn't leave. Otherwise, it would be a huge loss. This trial was indeed worthy of its reputation. He Ziji's face was also filled with unconcealable excitement. Otherwise, why would there be so many cultivators coming here one after another? Such a cultivation treasure land is hard to come by. Yes. Outside the Divine Ruins world, how could there be such a cultivation place that is comparable to the first-rate families in the Divine Ruins world? Chu Liyue's expression was slightly restrained as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. The reason why countless cultivators yearned for the Divine Ruins world was because it was rich in heaven and earth energy and had all kinds of resources. Outside the Divine Ruins world, it was almost impossible to break through to the high god level. However, if there was such a cultivation environment, what was the difference between it and the Divine Ruins world? That Tao Gate world could even be considered as a meaningless decoration. The appearance of such a place was obviously abnormal. Rong Xiu squeezed her palm. Be careful. There are high gods here, and there is more than one. The voice entered her ears and knocked on her heart. Chu Liyue nodded without batting an eyelid. The moment she entered this place, she sensed several obscure yet powerful auras around her. However, because she had not broken through to the high god level, she did not dare to be very sure. However, since Rong Xiu said so, the more Chu Liyue looked, the more she felt that this place was strange. At this moment, Hong An, who was the last person, also entered the boundary. He raised his hand and put away the wooden token. However, the boundary behind him did not dissipate. This was because it existed in the first place. The wooden token just summoned it. Suddenly, a figure flew over from the mountain top in the distance. That person was extremely fast. In a few breaths, he was in front of everyone. It was a man who looked to be about 30 years old. He was dressed in a black robe and had a tall figure. There was a scar on his face. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. He was also a high god expert. Hongen, why did you let him in so early? Scarface frowned. His originally stern and cold face became even more ferocious. The crowd, who were originally full of excitement, quieted down when they heard this and looked at each other in dismay. Who was this person? Why did it seem like he did not welcome them? Hongen stepped forward. Something happened at Heavenly Een Mountain, so I brought them here in advance. Since they were going to come here in the end, it shouldn't matter if they came earlier. As he spoke, he gave Scarface a look. However, Scarface did not fall for it. His frown deepened. What problem could there be at Heavenly Een Mountain? Even if there was, you should have sent a message back first. How could you bring them here so rashly? Being reprimanded in front of everyone, Hong An's face was a little embarrassed. The expression on his face also faded. These are all extremely talented cultivators. Some of them are even outstanding. If Master sees them, he will definitely be happy. At the mention of Master, Scarface was clearly a lot more afraid. He looked at everyone again and said impatiently, "You brought them here. You're the one who brought them here. You're responsible." With that, he turned around and left. Hong An gritted his teeth. He wanted to curse, but he held back in the end. At this time, there was no need to waste his mood on such trivial matters. However, the conversation between the two aroused the suspicion of many people. "Master? What master?" Xilan asked in a daze. "Big brother, aren't we going to the Divine Ruins world? Why did a master suddenly appear?" From what Hong An said, could it be that they were going to meet that master? He didn't say anything about this before. Ziji shook his head and motioned for her not to speak. In fact, he also felt a little uneasy at this moment. After Scarface left, the scene fell into a strange silence. Hong An turned around and did not seem to have noticed this strange change as he said, "That's right. Everyone, please follow me. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network." Chapter 2005. No one moved. At this point, if they still couldn't see the problem, they would really be stupid. "Lord Hongen, where exactly is this place? Who is your so-called master?" Someone boldly asked. Everyone's eyes were focused on Hongen. He chuckled. "Where is this place? Don't all of you see it clearly? This is a small space that is close to the Divine Ruins world. As for the master, it's naturally the master. I've never said that I'm a rogue cultivator, right?" Seeing that everyone was on alert, he secretly cursed Scarface in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. To be honest, we were originally a force in the Divine Ruins world. However, we are only a branch here. Regarding the trial, to be honest, we have our own selfish motives. Our goal is to attract everyone here. After all, everyone present is a top genius. If you can join us, it will definitely be like adding wings to a tiger. Hearing this, the expressions of many people present eased a lot. So he wanted to recruit people. If that was the case, it wasn't difficult to understand. However, if that's the case, Lord Hong An can explain it in advance. Why? Why was there a need to be so secretive and almost cause a misunderstanding? Hong An smiled. "You may not know, but the Divine Ruins world has its own rules. It's not appropriate to recruit people from outside, so we naturally can't make a big fuss. I originally wanted to bring you in and count you as a member of the Divine Ruins world before recruiting. I didn't expect that I didn't make this clear and almost caused a misunderstanding." His attitude was very sincere, and his tone was calm and patient. Many people immediately chose to believe him. After all, no matter what, his strength was here. Moreover, the heaven and earth energy here was abundant, and it was indeed a good place to cultivate. Why would such a powerful existence deceive them? Of course, if you don't like it, you can choose other sects after entering the Divine Ruins world. We won't stop you. Chu Luiwei sneered in his heart. What a nice way to put it. These people had never been to the Divine Ruins world, so they knew nothing about the situation there. In fact, the Divine Ruins world was vast, and the major families and sects were all separated by a great distance. If he were to go there rashly, he would probably die on the streets before he could even figure out what was going on. If that was the case, anyone who had some understanding of the Divine Ruins world would know how absurd and laughable it was. However, if the people present knew about this, they wouldn't have participated in this so-called trial in the first place. So that's how it is. It seems that we have misunderstood you. The person who raised the question first apologized profusely. The attitude of the remaining people also changed. The never-before-seen cultivation ground and the continuous appearance of high gods were very confusing. Chu Luiwei wanted to speak, but after careful consideration, he decided to wait and see. She wanted to see if the person behind all of this was what she thought. It's your first time here, so please follow me to rest. Seeing that everyone had been appeased, Hongyan finally felt relieved. He turned around and flew towards a mountain peak. Everyone followed closely behind. 15 minutes later, they arrived at one of the mountain peaks. During this journey, they didn't encounter anyone else. Everyone, please stay here for the time being. The door realm will open in a month, and everyone will go there again. At this point, everyone basically believed Hongyan's words and expressed their approval of this proposal. The mountain peak was tall and handsome, more than enough to accommodate 50 people. Hongyan even specially gave the injured youth a good medicinal pill to let him recuperate. This series of actions naturally made everyone more convinced of him. After doing this, Hongyan planned to turn around and leave. However, just as he took a step, the sky suddenly darkened. Chu Luiwei looked up. Above the clear and cloudless sky, dark clouds were rapidly converging. Her heart sank. This scene looked inexplicably familiar. What's going on? Xylan asked softly. Could it be that some heaven and earth treasure is about to appear? Everyone, don't worry, it's just that someone on that mountain peak is about to break through. Hongyan raised his hand and pointed to the mountain peak beside him and laughed. There's a barrier around this mountain peak, so it won't be affected. As he spoke, dark clouds gathered, and wind and thunder rumbled. Someone murmured in shock. Such a big movement, is someone about to break through to the high god level? Many people looked envious when they heard this. Hongyan's eyes flashed. In the Divine Ruins world, it's normal to break through to the high god level. With everyone's talent, if you cultivate here for a while, you might be able to break through the shackles. His words made many people's hearts burn with excitement. Chu Luiwei looked up at the darkening sky and narrowed her eyes. From the looks of it, they didn't seem to have been summoned by the other side. Rumble. A sudden clap of thunder rolled out from the layers of clouds. It was deafening. Then, everyone saw a silver snake-like Tianlei gathering quickly. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. The Tianlei was coming for them. As soon as this thought flashed through her mind, the powerful Tianlei came crashing down. It was heading straight for them. She quickly turned her head and saw that Hongyan had retreated far away. Digression, 6:30 p.m. 5th update. I don't think there's a catch-up today. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2006. Everyone's expressions changed drastically when they saw the rapidly descending Tianlei. How was it aimed at the mountain next to them? It was clearly coming for them. When they saw Hongyan, who had unknowingly dodged, a trace of uneasiness appeared in everyone's hearts. Dodge! Someone exclaimed. Not many people would be able to withstand such a bolt of heavenly lightning. Some people quickly rushed out of the mountain, but they were quickly intercepted. Bang! The person who wanted to rush out first was sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. Everyone looked over and saw that a barrier had suddenly appeared outside the mountain. It was the barrier that Hongyan had mentioned earlier. However, at this moment, not only was the barrier unable to protect them, but it also trapped all of them here. Lord Hongyan, what do you mean by this? With danger approaching, everyone became agitated. Hongyan clearly wanted to kill them. What a pity. Hongyan looked down at them with a smile on his face, but his eyes were bloodthirsty, cruel and indifferent. I didn't want to attack you directly, but unfortunately, you don't have that kind of luck. Previously on Heavenly Een Mountain, strange things happened frequently, and it made his heart beat faster. In the end, he had no choice but to bring them back in advance. Although this could not completely squeeze out their strength, it was quite a loss. However, compared to letting them go, it was much better, especially when there were a few good seedlings among them. Hearing Hong En's words and looking at his expression, how could they not understand? He had purposely brought them here so that he could make a move on them. Boom. Everyone did not have much time to be angry and resentful because the Tianlei had already struck. As expected, the barrier didn't manage to stop the heavenly lightning. Retreat. Everyone dodged backward. However, the speed of the heavenly lightning was extremely fast, and it contained an extremely terrifying energy. The Tianlei landed, and a deep gully immediately spread out. The wild energy swept out in all directions. Those who stood closer and did not have time to dodge were the first to bear the brunt of it. Chu Luiyue and the others stood further away and dodged quickly, so they were not affected. However, for most of the people present, this was undoubtedly a nightmare. Boom! Before everyone could catch their breath, the Tianlei in the sky was still rapidly emerging. From the looks of it, it was obvious that he was planning to end everyone here. Third brother. A mournful and sorrowful roar sounded. Chu Luiyue looked over with a frown. As for the injured youth, because he was too slow in retreating, he was about to be affected by the violent energy waves. Chu Luiyue was about to move, but Rong Xiu had already raised his hand. An extremely thin golden thread flew out and wrapped around the youth's ankle. Rong Xiu moved his wrist and instantly brought the young man back. Boom! That power swept over them. The entire ground where the young man had been standing had been lifted up. If that young man hadn't been able to dodge in time, this blow would have taken his life. Third brother. The youth, who thought that his third brother was dead for sure, was surprised and delighted when he saw this. He hurriedly changed direction and ran over. Second brother. The youth was still in a state of shock and looked at him in a daze. Just now, someone had clearly saved him. He lowered his head subconsciously. A thin golden thread flashed past his ankle. The youth looked in the direction of the golden thread. Rong Xiu had already stopped. Thank you, no need. Before the youth could finish speaking, Rong Xiu had already spoken. The reason why he had intervened was because he did not want you to feel guilty. After all, she was the one who had injured the youth. Although it was not a big deal, it was somewhat inappropriate for them to lose their lives because of this. Chu Luiyue sighed softly. This man, he always knew what she was thinking the best. However, Rong Xiu's action immediately attracted the attention of the people present. This strength, he was clearly much stronger than all of them. While they were still worried that they would be affected by the power of Tianlei and were running away in panic, this man actually had extra strength to save the youth. Hong En, who was standing in the sky, saw this scene as well. His face was cold at first, then he clapped and laughed. Good. Looks like you're quite strong too. He did not pay much attention to this person before. He did not expect him to be so extraordinary. Looking at his young age, he reckoned that his talent and strength were more outstanding than expected. This was great. The more people like him there were, the more worthwhile this battle would be. Chu Luiyue heard Hong En's laughter and looked up. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Tianlei in the sky was gathering at an even faster speed. Then, two more Tianlei struck down in succession. Rong Xiu waved his sleeves and instantly set up a barrier in front of him. Tianlei landed. Someone was affected and let out a shrill cry. Chu Luiyue instinctively looked over. Suddenly, her gaze froze. The man lying on the ground was affected by the power. He was covered in wounds and did not look like he would survive. However, the blood on his body was quickly absorbed by the ground beneath him. The thick smell of blood filled the air. It was almost nauseating. Countless images flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. Finally, it stopped at a familiar scene. That day at Peach Blossom Dock, didn't the people from Black Sword Sect use the same method to kill those cultivators? She suddenly realized something and looked at Rong Xiu. As expected, this is Black Demon Cave's territory. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2007. Following that, the heavenly lightning bolts bombarded every location on the mountain peak. In a short while, the originally handsome and tall mountain peak had become unrecognizable. Ravines crisscrossed and forests collapsed. Shrill and panicked screams came from everywhere, and messy bloodstains covered the mountains and wilderness. Some people were lying on the ground, gradually losing their breath. However, their blood was still rapidly flowing out, soaking into the ground. Chu Luiyue looked again, and her pupils suddenly shrank. She saw that those people's bodies were shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, Chu Luiyue finally understood something. This was to completely devour the last bit of power in their bodies? No wonder. No wonder the people of Black Demon Cave would hold a so-called trial here, using the Divine Ruins world as bait to deceive all these cultivators. Moreover, they wanted young geniuses. The essence and power seized like this was naturally the most abundant. She had long known that Black Demon Cave's cultivation method was very evil, but now that she saw it, it was 100 times more evil and sinister than she had expected. Not only that, even those people in the Peach Blossom Dock had probably suffered the same torture. She didn't know how long Black Demon Cave had been doing this, and she didn't know how many innocent people had died at their hands. Tianlei continued to fall, and the entire mountain peak was quickly covered by a white light. From the gaps in the flickering light, one could vaguely see the scene of people fleeing in panic. Painful wails could be heard incessantly. Hong An looked down at this scene from above, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Hong An, you're just going to act like this? The commotion here quickly attracted the attention of others. Someone flew up from a nearby mountain peak and looked over in their direction. Hong An crossed his arms and snorted. Among these people, there are a few who don't know what's good for them. The sooner we deal with them, the better. That person nodded in understanding and then said with some regret, "That's a pity. If you can let these people stay in Heavenly Een Mountain for a month, you can get a lot of commission. Maybe you can take the opportunity to refine a divine body. You have to know that such an opportunity doesn't come by often. If you miss this opportunity, who knows how long you'll have to wait for the next one." Upon hearing this, Hong An's face darkened. This person was right. In the entire sect, the only exit was the Cloud State City. Every once in a while, they would use the Divine Ruins world as an excuse to hold trials outside to attract all kinds of genius cultivators. Every time a trial was held, a different person would be in charge of it. They were the so-called gatekeepers. According to the rules, the cultivators who passed the trial would stay on Heavenly Een Mountain for a month. And during this 1 month, they had set up a Xian formation on Lunar Mountain in advance, which would take the opportunity to devour these people's origin power. After the matter was completed, the gatekeeper would receive a portion of the power as a reward. The more power they devoured, the more benefits the gatekeeper would receive. One had to know that this energy was formed by gathering the origin power of the most talented cultivators. It was extremely pure and precious. If he could get such an opportunity, he might be able to save years or even decades of cultivation time. Who wouldn't want such a good thing? Every time, the entire sect would engage in an intense competition for this spot. Hong An had spent a lot of effort and thought to get this opportunity. Who knew that it would be wasted just like that? Once they entered the barrier, these people would have to bear the bombardment of Tianlei. Although this could further devour their power, in the process, they would lose a lot of their own power. And the gatekeeper would not be able to get a commission. But the most important thing was that his master valued this very much. If his master knew what he had done, he would definitely be punished. The only thing that made Hong An slightly relieved was that there were a few outstanding people in this group. With the existence of those people, perhaps they could make up for the previous losses and make his master less angry. Hong An held his breath. Such a good opportunity had been wasted. Not to mention a commission, He would thank the heavens if he could escape punishment this time. He didn't know what had happened on Heavenly Een Mountain. Right. This matter had to be reported as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Hong'an said to that person, "Since you have nothing to do now, help me watch for a while. I'll go and report to my master about the situation on Heavenly Een Mountain." That person had a good relationship with him, so he agreed. His figure moved and quickly came to Hong'an's side. "Then go and come back quickly." Hong'an nodded and was about to turn and leave. However, just as he took a step, he heard a strange sound coming from the mountain below. Almost at the same time, the people standing next to him gasped in shock. How could this be? Hong'an hurriedly turned his head to look. How? His voice seemed to be suddenly cut off by something, and he stopped abruptly. On the mountain below, under the flickering lightning, a thin figure was faintly discernible. He held a sword in his hand and raised it high above his head. As for the lightning bolts that were descending, they were all swallowed up by the sword. Countless streams of light swam around the thick and deep sword, almost dyeing it into a dazzling snowy color. However, the terrifying power of Tianlei was indeed quickly annihilated by it. With the appearance of this person, the Tianlei that was bombarding indiscriminately was all stopped. Most of the cultivators were protected by this and evacuated to the side together. Except for the few people who unfortunately died because of the sudden incident, most of the remaining people were still alive. That person is... The light flickered, reflecting the soft short golden hair. The veins on Hong'an's forehead throbbed. This person was the golden-haired youth from before. How could he be so strong? He doesn't know what's good for him. Hong'an cursed in a low voice. He wants to show off at this time. He's really tired of living. I'd like to see how long he can be arrogant. The power of Tianlei hadn't been fully displayed yet. As he spoke, several Tianlei in the sky gathered crazily again and then slashed down one after another. Boom, boom. For a moment, the sky changed color. Hong'an's lips curled into a cold smile. They had prepared the array on this mountain long ago. Once it was activated, it could quickly summon Tianlei. It was impossible for this person to withstand it alone. However, the next scene completely froze Hong'an's smile on his face. Because facing the continuous bombardment of Tianlei, the youth didn't show any fear. Instead, he tightened his grip on the sword in his hand, raised it high, and then slashed it down fiercely. Cloud Sky Copper Sword. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2008. The heavy and majestic longsword suddenly fell. Wherever the sword chi went, the void was torn apart. The violent spatial turbulence raged and surged. Following that, a huge cracking sound came from the mountain. Boom! A ravine spread across the mountain. The huge mountain peak was instantly split into two by this sword. All the Tianlei power was affected by the impact and was swept away in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the mountain was split in half. Many cultivators stood on one side, while the violent Tianlei power gathered on the other side and raged wildly. Half of the mountain began to be destroyed and collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Rumble! For a moment, the mountain rocks rolled down and dust flew. It was a complete mess all over the mountains and plains. Hong'an was stunned. The scene in front of him was so beyond his expectations that he stood there for a long time, unable to react. However, the person next to him suddenly realized something. No, isn't he a stage 9 martial artist? How can he unleash such shocking power? Looking at his cultivation level, he was indeed not a god-level powerhouse. However, the strength he displayed now was already more powerful than many god-level martial artists. Hong'an's lips trembled. I don't know. Back then, he felt that the golden-haired young man's talent and strength were very outstanding, so he gave him a second chance. Who would have thought that he would end up in such a big mess? Looking at the destroyed half of the mountain, Hong'an's blood froze, and he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. This time, it was really a big mess. If his master pursued this matter, he was afraid that, no, it's fine. It's definitely fine. Hong An took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Even if he's really a god-level powerhouse, he's definitely not a match for Tianlei. He did not believe that this person could really cause any trouble. As expected, the Tianlei in the sky seemed to have sensed something and quickly began to gather again. Chu Liwei stood behind the crowd and looked at the thin and tall figure in front of her. She lightly sighed, and her lips curved up into a smile. That's amazing. After not seeing each other for such a long time, Little Boat's strength had already made an extremely shocking leap. Yes, he had yet to break through the threshold of becoming a high god. However, the power stored in his body was comparable to that of a high deity. Although the Cloud Sky Copper Sword was not a peak divine artifact, it was something that Chu Liwei had spent a great deal of effort to refine. Swords had spirits. In Xiao Zhou's hands, this sword could unleash its greatest power. Everyone looked at the small boat gratefully. Clearly, his attack had saved many lives. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He was the one who beat me to it. He clearly saw that the reason why Chang Wanzhou attacked them was because there was a Tianlei coming their way. To be precise, they were here for Chu Liwei. At that time, he was about to make a move, but he did not expect Chang Wanzhou to beat him to it. Chu Liwei glanced at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Why was he still jealous at a time like this? She had not seen Little Boat for a long time. Little Boat probably did not know her true strength, so he was in a hurry to make a move. His personality was straightforward and simple, and he did things decisively. If he thought of something, he would do it immediately. He had always been like that. At that moment, the sky was still dark. Several silver snake-like Tianlei appeared one after another in the thick clouds. The pressure was overwhelming. Everyone had just heaved a sigh of relief because they had escaped a calamity, but when they saw this scene, they all became worried again. Why is there no end to this Tianlei? Someone asked anxiously. If this continues, I'm afraid we'll be finished sooner or later. There was more than one person who was so worried. After all, they had never seen such a scene before. This golden-haired youth could help them for a while, but he could not help them forever. If they could not leave this place, then the final outcome might be the same. Little Boat gently exhaled, and a bright light flashed across his eyes. That voice just now, he heard it. That was a compliment. He knew. He originally wanted to turn back, but in the end he endured it. Although they did not say anything, he knew that this was not a good time to acknowledge each other. For some unknown reason, she did not make a move. Even Rong Xiu, who was beside her, was deliberately suppressing his strength. Under such circumstances, naturally he was the most suitable one to step forward. Little Boat was extremely smart, especially when it came to matters related to her. He always had extremely sharp senses and reaction. Therefore, he held the Cloud Sky Copper Sword in his hand tightly and looked up. Boom! Boom! When the Tianlei slashed down continuously, he flew out with his sword. He faced it head-on. Buzz! A sword chime resounded through heaven and earth. Immediately after, the Tianlei seemed to have been summoned by some kind of power, and they all changed their direction and headed toward the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. Hong An and Rong Xiu were dumbfounded. Everyone on the mountain was shocked. Chu Liwei blinked. So the Cloud Sky Copper Sword that she had refined back then was so powerful? But it was clearly not even a King Divine artifact. That Cloud Sky Copper Sword has your aura. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and suddenly spoke. She touched her chin. Could it be? Was it really because she had forcefully captured those Tianlei back then to refine the Cloud Sky Copper Sword that this sword still posed a certain threat to those Tianlei until now? This explanation seemed to make sense. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Those Tianlei are not afraid of that sword, but you. Digression, Tianlei, meow meow meow. I'll be back at 6. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2009. Just as he finished speaking, there was a loud bang. The Cloud Sky Copper Sword had already devoured all the Tianlei. As Xiao Zhou's sword slashed down, The energy poured out like a torrent. However, the power of the heavenly lightning that was originally aimed at them had all turned into sword chi and was heading towards the collapsed half of the cliff. The mountain rocks turned into dust, and the space was torn apart crazily. The wind howled, and for a moment, the clouds and thunder moved. Even the boundary outside the mountains started to shake violently. It was about to break. Xiao Zhou's sword also dealt a heavy blow to Hong En's heart. Looking at the half of the cliff that was almost completely destroyed, Hong En's body stiffened, and he almost couldn't believe his eyes. He had never thought that a rank 9 warrior could actually unleash such strength. He asked himself, and even he himself might not be able to withstand the Tianlei. What the hell? This was really what the hell? Thinking about it carefully, this youth was not right from the start of the trial. Hong En was filled with regret. If he knew that this youth could cause so much trouble, he would definitely not have let him in. But now that things had turned out like this, how should he clean up? Hong En? The person beside him shouted a few times. What are you still standing there for? Quickly go and report to Master. This anxious voice finally made Hong En come back to his senses. Immediately, his face turned ghastly pale. He was all too clear that if this scene was seen by Master, what kind of terrifying punishment would he face? One must know that there was a Xian formation that they had painstakingly set up on the mountain peak. Now, it was all destroyed. Now that things had turned out like this, it couldn't be concealed no matter what. Hong En took a deep breath and reluctantly responded. Got it? You stay here and stabilize them first. I'll be back soon. However, before he could do anything, a figure had already flown over from afar. What's going on? The cold and solemn old voice was filled with majesty. The person who came was a black-robed old man with a head full of silver hair and wrinkles. One of his eyes was deeply sunken in, and his entire body emitted a cold and powerful pressure. When Hong En and Xiao Zhou saw the person who came, they were shocked and hurriedly said, "Greetings to Hall Master Do Min." Do Min ignored them. She walked past them and came to the front of the mountain. She quickly took in the scene in front of her. When he saw half of the collapsed mountain, his face turned even colder. Hong En, is this what you've done? His voice sounded exceptionally hoarse and cold. First, you brought them back in advance, and then you allowed them to do such a thing? Hong En, how many lives do you have to pay for the losses you've caused this time? Hong En's legs went soft and he shuddered, almost kneeling down directly. Hall Master Do Min, this, he didn't even know how to explain it. Do Min glanced at him coldly. The opportunity to become a gatekeeper is extremely rare. Do you know how much effort this old man put in to leave this spot for you this time? And you, this is how you repay me? Hong En's face was as pale as a ghost. Not bad. The reason why he could get this opportunity this time was because of Do Min. He had never seen Do Min speak to him in such a tone. Facing Do Min's question, Hong En couldn't say a word. What could he say? The whole thing seemed very strange from the beginning. Even that heavenly mountain and this powerful golden-haired youth. But even if he said these things, who would believe or care? Everyone only cared about the results. Trash. Do Min sneered. He was extremely disappointed with Hong En. He was really blind before to have taken a fancy to such a thing. He was hoping that he could use this opportunity to temper his divine body, but he didn't expect that it would cause so much trouble. Do Min retracted his gaze. The most important thing now was to deal with the mess in front of him. Master is resting. No one is to disturb him. It would be best if this matter was resolved before Master wakes up. Otherwise, even he couldn't escape this calamity. Hong En's back was already drenched in cold sweat. He could only nod when he heard this. Do Min took a step forward and raised his right hand. Then, a powerful aura transformed into a huge silver ball and flew out instantly. When the silver ball came into contact with the boundary outside the mountain, it immediately let out a buzzing sound. Then, the silver ball quickly dissipated and turned into countless streams of light, scattering in all directions and quickly merging into the boundary. The boundary that was originally on the verge of collapse stabilized with the support of this force. At such a young age, you have some ability. Do Min looked at the golden-haired youth standing on the mountain peak. Chang Wanzhou looked up and a cold light flickered in his eyes. Do Min frowned. The aura of this youth made him feel a trace of threat. He was just a rank 9 warrior. Do Min felt an inexplicable anger in his heart. His face was dark as he crossed his hands in front of him. Several streams of light gushed out in an instant. Almost at the same time, a strange sound suddenly came from under half of the collapsed mountain peak. Chu Luiyue looked over there and his eyes narrowed. Under the pile of rocks, streams of light flew out and intertwined with each other. Half a Xian formation was slowly emerging. At the same time, the mountain under their feet suddenly shook violently. A gully suddenly spread out from under their feet. Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes and his heart sank. Almost at the same time, Rong Xiu grabbed her waist and with a tap of his foot, he soared into the sky. In the next moment, countless cracks crazily spread out like a spider web, covering half of the mountain peak completely. Since you like to split mountains so much, then I'll use this entire mountain to be buried with you. This way, it's not a wasted trip. Do Min's voice that was filled with threat and killing intent sounded like thunder in everyone's ears. He was a venerable god expert, and when he spoke, he deliberately increased the pressure. To the young cultivators on the mountain peak, it was undoubtedly a heavy blow. Immediately, there were people who couldn't withstand the pressure and fell to the ground, even vomiting blood. At this time, the Xian formation that was originally buried under the mountain finally revealed its original appearance, floating in midair and enveloping everyone. Although the Xian formation was slightly damaged due to Chang Wanzhou's attack, it was quickly repaired after Do Min took action. This Xian formation was like a cage, trapping everyone in this place. The entire mountain was suddenly in a mess. Everyone was filled with despair. This person's strength was even more powerful than Hong. Even if everyone here joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for him. Xylin cried softly. She was afraid and regretful. We're all going to die here today. If she knew that this was hell on earth, she wouldn't have come even if she was beaten to death. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Be quiet. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2010. Although her voice was soft, it carried an unquestionable pressure. Xylin immediately stopped talking. Her eyes were red as she sobbed and looked at her. Because of what happened before, she no longer dared to be presumptuous in front of Chu Luiyue. So when she heard this, she subconsciously held it in. Ziji patted her back gently. Seeing that Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu didn't seem to be as panicked and fearful as the others, his uneasy heart gradually calmed down. These two people seemed to have an inexplicable power that made people feel at ease. He couldn't tell what was going on, but he felt that following them seemed to... Things weren't that bad. In this situation, what should he do to escape? The Xian formation began to descend slowly. Every time it got closer, the terrifying pressure and unbridled power above made everyone tremble in fear. Probably realizing that relying on Tianlei's attack wouldn't be able to finish them off easily, Do Min directly used his killing move. Chang Wanzhou raised his head slightly and stared at the approaching Xian formation. There seemed to be endless waves surging in his eyes. This aura. He held the cloud sky copper sword tightly, tapped his toes, and went straight for the Xian formation. Boom! The power of both sides collided fiercely. Following this shocking explosion, the unbridled power was like a torrent that surged in all directions. The remaining mountain peak that had already been split into pieces finally collapsed completely. For a moment, light flashed. Chang Wanzhou's figure was instantly engulfed by this light. Do Min's lips curled into a cold smile. That eye that was still intact flickered with a cold and bloodthirsty light. You don't know what's good for you. Hong En and Rong Xiu, who were standing behind him, heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this scene. Hong En hurriedly said, "You're a venerable god expert. How can a mere rank 9 warrior be your opponent? With just one move you can." Before he could finish his sentence, his expression suddenly changed. The other person also instantly realized something and couldn't help but exclaim in shock. How can this be? He's actually not dead? Crack. The sound of something shattering could be heard clearly. This time, even Do Min's expression changed. Impossible. A crack had actually appeared on the huge Xian formation. While, before they could react, the profound formation had actually shattered into pieces. Countless streams of light with astonishing power scattered in all directions. The enchantment outside the mountain instantly shattered. Down below, everyone's expression changed, and they all retreated. A figure flew out from within. He fell heavily onto the ruins. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. Smoke and dust rose in all directions. Chang Wanzhou's body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura instantly weakened. He was standing closest to the Xian formation, so he received the greatest impact. This time, he was almost half dead. Chu Liuyue's heart tightened. He was about to make a move but was stopped by Rong Xiu. Wait, Chu Liyue was anxious. He couldn't just watch as Xiao Zhou was beaten to death, right? Just as she was about to say something, she noticed that Rong Xiu was frowning and looking in a certain direction. Her heart skipped a beat, and she followed his gaze. In the distance, a powerful and unparalleled pressure suddenly descended. Her heart seemed to be clenched tightly by something. This aura, so noisy. A hoarse and low voice seemed to have passed through a long time and space and came from afar. The voice was calm and casual, but it carried supreme majesty. Mo Shiqian. He was actually here. Digression, Ka Wenzhong, 7 o'clock. Sorry for the kissing. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2011. So far, Chu Liyue had never really seen Mo Shiqian. Although they had confronted each other several times, Mo Shiqian had never shown his face. Chu Liyue even heard his name from Rong Xiu. However, the moment she heard this voice, Chu Liyue knew, it must be him. Chu Liyue held her breath, her heart beating violently, and blood seemed to flow under her eardrums. Previously, she had already guessed that this was the territory of the Black Demon Cave, but she never thought that Mo Shiqian would be here too. In that case, wasn't this the headquarters of the Black Demon Cave? So they were hiding here. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows, revealing a look of realization. No wonder he had sent people to investigate before, but there had been no results. Mo Shiqian was really capable. He had directly left the Divine Ruins world and came here. What a good idea. Hearing this, Chu Liyue instantly understood Rong Xiu's meaning and frowned slightly. So that was it. A few years ago, the Black Demon Cave suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if they had disappeared from the Divine Ruins world. Who knew? They were actually hiding outside the Divine Ruins world. In this world, who would have thought that they would make such a choice? Moreover, although they were outside the Divine Ruins world, this place was close to the Gate Realm, and the energy of heaven and earth was abundant. It was extremely suitable for cultivation, no different from the Divine Ruins world. If she had not come here today, who knew when she would have realized this? Understanding this, Chu Liyue's mind raced. She knew very well that Mo Shiqian wanted to snatch her zither score. Previously, she had always thought that the Black Demon Cave had chosen to retreat because Rong Xiu had personally come and severely injured them. They had made this decision in order to avoid the sharp edge and recuperate. But now, she vaguely felt that this guess seemed to be somewhat wrong. Greetings, Sect Master. On the other side, when Hong En and the others heard this voice, their expressions changed and they hurriedly bowed. Suddenly, the world fell silent. All the noise seemed to have dissipated at this moment. The berserk energy that had been wreaking havoc everywhere stopped flowing. The vast space seemed to be frozen in place. Chu Liyue could only hear the sound of his heart beating violently. Mo Shiqian's strength had obviously become more unfathomable. Finally, a cloud of black mist condensed in the air. A tall and straight figure stood there, faintly discernible like a ghost. Chu Liyue held his breath. That person, it must be Mo Shiqian. However, in that instant just now, she actually didn't see clearly how he had appeared. In all directions, the void was calm, as if it had frozen. The moment his figure appeared, the surrounding heaven and earth energy and space did not fluctuate at all. There was still a considerable distance between them. However, Chu Liwei still felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on her chest, making it hard for her to breathe. This person's strength could only be described as terrifying. Suddenly, Chu Liwei felt an extremely dangerous gaze fall on him. Her hair immediately stood on end. It had been a long time since she felt like she was walking between life and death. At this moment, a warm and broad palm slowly grasped her hand. The warmth of the iron kept coming from above. A faint cold fragrance assaulted her, almost surrounding her. Rong Xiu. He was still here. She looked up. The two of them looked at each other. Rong Xiu smiled slightly and gave her a reassuring look. Chu Liu's heart instantly calmed down. No matter what danger she encountered or what situation she was in, he would always be by her side to protect her. Chu Liu blinked gently. That gaze finally moved away from her. Mo Shiqian frowned slightly. Could it be that moment just now was an illusion? Putting those thoughts away, he looked up again and gazed ahead. I haven't been out for a while. I didn't expect you to give me such a big gift. He spoke slowly, his voice calm and emotionless. However, in the ears of Hong En and the rest, these words were no different from a life and death warning. Do Min took a deep breath and said, "It's all because of our incompetence to disturb Sect Master. Please punish us." In the end, the worst situation had occurred. But at this time, there was no other way. Life and death were all in the hands of Master. Mo Shiqian ignored him and only raised his hand. Of course, when he did this, his hand was still wrapped in a layer of black fog. No one could see anything clearly. Then, Chang Wanzhou's body was pulled up by this shocking force. At this moment, a few of his ribs were broken and he had suffered some internal injuries. His entire body was covered in blood and dust, and he looked extremely miserable. He was on the verge of death and looked like he was about to die at any moment. However, he still held the Cloud Sky Copper sword tightly in his hand. Rank 9 warrior? Mo Shiqian's voice suddenly carried a hint of a smile. Do Min, you're getting more and more promising. Do Min's face was pale. As a god, after attacking, his move was actually broken by a rank 9 warrior. If word got out, even he himself would feel embarrassed. He wanted to defend himself, but when he thought about how this person hated these things the most, he gave up in the end. He just stood there trembling in fear, waiting for the final result. Chang Wanzhou's body seemed to be supported by an invisible force as he floated quietly in the air. Mo Shiqian looked at him carefully. Your talent is not bad. Suddenly, his voice paused. He seemed to have discovered something as his fingers moved slightly. At this moment, Chang Wanzhou finally opened his eyes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2012. His eyes were filled with wariness. His entire body was tense as if he was prepared to attack at any moment. However, such actions and threats were not worth mentioning in Mo Shiqian's eyes. He would not take a rank 9 warrior seriously. Even if this young man forcefully withstood Do Min's attack, it was just a small matter in Mo Shiqian's eyes. He raised his wrist gently. A strong force assaulted him. Chang Wanzhou's elbow went numb and he involuntarily let go. The Cloud Sky Copper sword flew forward. Chang Wanzhou's expression immediately turned stern. Just as he opened his mouth, he felt as if an invisible hand was strangling his neck. His voice stopped abruptly, and his originally pale face quickly flushed red. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great. Furthermore, he was injured and could not fight against the other party at all. Hence, he could only watch as the Cloud Sky Copper sword landed in Mo Shiqian's hands. Everyone was silent. The world was so cold and solemn that it seemed to have been completely frozen. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Mo Shiqian. Shock, reverence, fear, all sorts of emotions filled everyone's hearts. That terrifying oppressive might made it so that they couldn't even speak a single word. Seeing Emo Shurqian's actions, Chu Luiyue slowly clenched his fists. This aura is very familiar. Emo Shurqian weighed the cloud sky copper sword. After looking at it repeatedly, he confirmed his guess. He looked up at Chang Wanzhou again. You're her man. This was not a question, but a statement. He did not say who this she was. However, the meaning of his words could not be more obvious. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips tightly and did not say anything. However, Emo Shurqian clearly did not need his answer. He would definitely not be wrong about this person's aura. Interesting. Indeed, like master, like servant. Emo Shurqian laughed, but there was no smile in his words. Chu Luiyue was not afraid of death, and so was this young man. He actually barged in here. Who let him in? Emo Shurqian suddenly asked. Hong En's legs turned to jelly and he looked at Do Min for help. At this time, he would only have a chance of survival if Do Min spoke up for him. However, at this moment, Do Min suddenly turned around and looked at him with furrowed brows. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear the sect leader's question? Hong En was stunned, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Do Min had already turned around and bowed. Replying to sect master, Hong En is fully in charge of this trial. Hong En's mind went blank. Do Min continued to speak with a pained and regretful expression. Back then, it was this subordinate's fault for choosing him. I didn't expect him to do such a thing. He deserved to be killed. This subordinate did not investigate properly. It is also a dereliction of duty. Sect leader, please punish me. His words sounded like he was asking for forgiveness, but in fact, he was pushing all the blame to Hong. Do Min knew very well that he would definitely not be able to escape safely this time with such a big commotion. But at the very least, he had to protect his own life. As for Hong En, at this time, he could not even protect himself. How could he care about him? Hong En did not expect that Do Min, who had always favored him, would not leave him any leeway at this critical moment. He even pushed him behind his back. Did he think that he would not die quickly enough? For a moment, Hong En was also enraged. He immediately said, Sect leader, please investigate. This subordinate is really wronged in this matter. This subordinate, you did very well. Emo Shurqian was impatient to listen to their excuses, so he interrupted Hong En. Although he had been resting earlier, he was aware of everything that had happened. He was also very clear about what they were planning in their hearts. Now, he did not have the time to deal with this. Hong En was stunned. The two people beside him were also shocked. What did the sect leader say just now? He said he did very well? Hong En almost thought that he was hallucinating. He looked up in disbelief and glanced at Emo Shurqian. However, with just a glance, he sensed a warning and hurriedly lowered his head. It's a felony to bring them back in advance. However, this time, it's considered a crime. Emo Shurqian's meaning was very clear. It was because of this golden-haired youth that he did not intend to pursue Hong En's mistake. Hong En was shocked and confused, but more than that, he was happy to have survived a disaster. According to the sect leader, he would not die. In fact, he might not even be punished. And all this was because he brought back the golden-haired youth? Do Min was embarrassed. Emo Shurqian's words were undoubtedly like a slap to his face. But what was the background of that golden-haired youth that the sect leader valued him so much? They were not the only ones. At this moment, almost everyone had the same question in their hearts. This golden-haired youth's talent and strength were not bad, but it did not seem to be to an exaggerated extent. Moreover, he had tried to fight Emo Shurqian just now. Such a person usually only had a dead end. What did he have that Emo Shurqian valued? Could it be that sword? Emo Shurqian put away the sword and sized up Chang Wanzhou again. Although this cloud sky copper sword was not a top-grade divine artifact, it was obvious that a lot of effort had been put into it. Chu Luiyue was willing to give this sword to him. It could be seen that this golden-haired youth had a close relationship with her. She can be said to be in the limelight now, Emo Shurqian muttered thoughtfully and chuckled. If she knows that you are in my hands, I wonder how she will react. She would not be in a good mood. Chang Wanzhou stared at the figure in front of him. Due to the black fog, he could not see the other party's appearance clearly. He could only see the rough outline of the figure. He knew that the other party was extremely strong. He had not felt such a dangerous aura for a long time. Emo Shurqian asked, "What's your name?" Chang Wanzhou did not speak. Emo Shurqian smiled. "Do you think I can't do anything to you like this?" This golden-haired youth's appearance was extremely eye-catching. It was not difficult to find out his identity after asking around. Emo Shurqian's gaze landed on the crowd below. That sharp and cold gaze was like a blade that cut across their bodies. Some people's legs went weak and they could barely stand. "Whoever can tell me this person's name and background, I will reward you handsomely," Emo Shurqian said. Everyone was dead silent. No one answered. Not to mention that they did not know. Even if they did, they could not say it out loud. Chang Wanzhou had just saved their lives. Emo Shurqian's expression darkened as he smiled faintly. "Oh, you don't want to say it?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.